Alex here with a video on high conflict child custody. The topic is right of refusal. Before I go into exactly what that is and the purpose of this video, I want to give you a scenario. So let's say you have one child with your ex, whether you're divorcing or in a child custody dispute. Isn't really relevant. The point is that the court is making rulings on the custody of the child. Let's say your ex is going, they've remarried and they're going to Hawaii for like a week for a honeymoon or something. Now, in these kinds of situations, you could obviously watch the child while they're gone, or they could put the child with like a sitter, or they could put the child with like their mom or dad, which is grandma or grandpa. With the right of refusal in place, they actually don't have the choice unless you first refuse. So if a court orders right of refusal, they first have to ask you, do you want, to watch our kid? And if you say, yes, I do want to watch our kid, then they have to let you watch them while they're gone. If you say no, then they have to find a suitable alternative, so like a sitter or like I said, like grandma and grandpa, whatever. The right of refusal, I know people are not going to like this because I get questions on it a lot. If you're in a high conflict child custody case, I do not think that you should agree to right of refusal. And I hope judges are watching this, because I'm going to tell you, if you're a judge, and it sounds fair, and it's like parents should be able to cooperate and do things like this when it's in their child's best interest. High conflict child custody cases are their own animal, and the last thing you want to do is add to an already high conflict situation. If usually a high conflict child custody situation usually involves an abuser, unless they're both abusers. Then there's two abusers. And this person is looking to exploit anything that they can to create conflict. If it's not a high conflict child custody case, then by all means, agree to do right of refusal. I really wish that the courts wouldn't even order it. I really wish that it would just be something that people could do unofficially on their own without going to court. Because if you're fighting about issues like this, then the last thing you want to do is impose more requirements on yourself, or if you're the judge, on the litigants, because you can bet it's going to come back on a contempt of court. If you're the judge, you can bet that's going to happen. For everyone else, it sounds like a nice idea, but all it's gonna do is add more conflict, more court disputes, and as I said, more contempt motions. It's gonna happen. Even if it's not, oh, my ex didn't do right of refusal, so therefore I'm gonna go for contempt of court. Even if it's not that, it'll be things like at the exchange. If you're in a high conflict child custody situation, even the exchanges are out of control. And so when you're talking about right of refusal, you're adding exchanges on top of that. If you're in a high conflict child custody case, even the messages, the interactions between you and your opponent are out of control. And now you're adding more things to communicate. In fact, one of the things that's a red flag to me is when somebody calls me and says, our situation is high conflict, my ex is an abuser, and I want right of refusal. It's a red flag to me. If somebody's, and I've had a few people say that, and right away I'm thinking this person's a liar, or they're the one that is doing they're the one that is adding the conflict. A person who sincerely is frustrated with their high conflict child custody case is going to instinctively want to avoid adding conflict. And honestly, you can complain that it's not fair, I'm not getting to see my kids when they're going on a trip, but when you're going on a trip, you can also put your child with a sitter or with your mom and dad. And here's the thing, if the situation is so high conflict that the messages are explosive, that the exchanges are insane, that is a blessing. You don't have to send a message when you're going on a trip. You don't have to go and do an extra exchange when at every exchange crazy things are happening. For me, every exchange was a crazy situation. And I mean, okay, we'll be fair, 95% of exchanges were a crazy situation. And on top of this, the tense, or whatever, on top of the tension that's present at every exchange, which by the way isn't even at a house, We had to go to like a third place, for a while it was a Wendy's, after that it was a Denny's. Some people exchange at a police station, it's that bad. Aside from the fact that the location's inconvenient, some people are having things that are stolen. So in my case, my ex was stealing clothes. Our son would go over with a big bundle of clothes, he'd come back with one pair. All the other ones she'd keep them. So adding an exchange means more clothes is getting stolen. So it's like, do not agree to the right of refusal if you're in a high conflict child custody case. If you're worried that the judge is going to think that you're being a mean person, explain to the court why you don't want to do high conflict child custody. If you have an attorney, they'll hopefully do a great job at explaining this. Some attorneys are naive and they'll say you're going to sound bad. That's a good sign to get rid of that lawyer. That is a lawyer who does not understand high conflict child custody. If they're telling you that you need to go along with this because you're going to sound bad, they have no clue what they're talking about. There are lawyers out there that know how bad high conflict child custody is, and they will understand that. And I mean, one time I had a free lawyer helping me, and I had to fire them because they told me to go ahead and go along with something my ex was asking for. And even though she was a free lawyer, I said, you know what, I need to take my case back over. That was actually after I had primary physical custody. And she said, okay, she withdrew, I took my case over, and then I won sole legal custody. And then I terminated my ex's parental rights. If I would have gone along with what that lawyer said, I would still be going through a high conflict situation today. And because I didn't do that, I'm no longer going through it. So I am going to add a sort of compromise at the end of this video. If you insist on doing what's the right of refusal, if you insist on it, or if the court has cornered you into it, because some judges are amateurs and they don't know what they're doing. I hate to say it, but some judges who don't understand high conflict child custody will say things like, you just need to work it out. That's the most nails on a chalkboard phrase that a judge can state when somebody is going through a genuine, bona fide high conflict child custody case. You can't work it out because it takes two people to work something out, and the other person won't do it, and they don't understand that. Anyway, let me get back on target here. If you're cornered by the court, if you're cornered by your lawyer, you just don't want to lose your lawyer, you're just going to go along with it, at the very least, insist on a parameter as to when the right of refusal applies, and make it a big parameter. Make it something like, if one of us is gone for a month, then the other person gets a right of refusal. Or, you know, if you really have to, go for a week. If one of us is gone for at least a week, you know, but don't do this nonsense of anytime you need to get a sitter, I have a right to have the child. Anytime you go to work, say 8 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, a day, 2 days, don't do it, because you're gonna, if you're in a high conflict child custody case, you already know not to do this, because you already know what's gonna happen. It's gonna become a non-stop issue all the time. Stuff's gonna get stolen. There's gonna be fights at exchanges. You know, if you don't agree, if you're in a high conflict child custody case and you insist on this kind of parameter being in place, you're the problem. So you can tell I'm a little passionate about this video because I get these right of refusal questions all the time, and I tell people, no, don't do it. You're going to regret it. The Supreme Court of Nevada has already penalized judges who have modified custody when a parent has to go to work or something. I've seen decisions where a judge said, this person's going to work every day, they work full time, they work overtime, and the child is with a sitter or with mom or grandma or grandpa, and this other parent, it's a person who's in school, and they can see the kids more often. And since they can see the kids more often, they're going to get primary physical custody. I've seen the Supreme Court of Nevada say, no, if they're at work and they have arrangements for their child, then you cannot take away their physical custody. I've seen these decisions. Go ahead, go out there and read them, because I know it helps some people who are breadwinners. They're out there working. They have overtime. They bust their butts. For women, they're a nurse. They're working 10-hour shifts, and they're afraid they're going to lose custody. No. Look into your case law, especially if you're in Nevada, and you will see the decisions where the Supreme Court has stated you cannot take away their physical custody if they're working a lot, as long as they have their kids taken care of while they're at work. It's a different situation if you're leaving your 6-year-old at home alone. That's neglect. But if you are arranging for your child to have a sitter or to go to grandma and grandpa's, If your child's being taken care of while you're at work, you are entitled to physical custody. The court cannot take that away from you. So don't agree to right of refusal. Insist on putting your child with grandma and grandpa or a sitter. It's ideal if you can say grandma and grandpa, because then you can argue, that means our child gets to have a relationship with the grandparents, and that's healthy. Even if you can't do that and it's a sitter, if it's a high conflict child custody case, you have no choice. You have no choice. You cannot add conflict to an already high conflict situation. Pretty adamant on this video. I've thought about it a lot. People have a lot of reasons for being afraid of insisting on this, and I just want to know that from my 8 years of high conflict child custody litigation, I've learned that this is something that you should not agree to. My ex pushed this thing. She pushed it a lot. She pushed it all the time, and I continue to refuse to allow it to go into the orders of to go into a court order. So I just want to go back a little bit to the beginning. I did mention this doesn't apply to you if you're not in a high conflict child custody situation, but I still don't think you should have it put into an order. Do it unofficially, because if things break down later on and people want to get spiteful, you don't want to end up back in court on contempt motions for something like this. And again, going back again one more time, if you do agree to it because you want to be nice or whatever, make it a big deal. Make it something where I'm gone for a week, I'm gone for a month. Don't do it for all these little tiny, don't put it in an order, I'm saying. If you want to be nice and unofficially say, hey, I'm going to work tomorrow, you want to watch the kids, that's fine, do that. But don't put it into an order, because a high conflict child custody abuser is going to exploit it. I can guarantee that they're going to exploit that, because this person is already trying to make your life a living hell. Don't give them more tools with which to do that. Any comments, any questions, just post it down in the comments below. If you've already agreed to right of refusal, it can be very difficult to have that order vacated, but you may be able to do it based on conflict. You should consider it if you're having a lot of conflict, having that portion of the order vacated so you no longer have to do it. But it's much easier to just avoid it being entered in the first place. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. I'll see you guys next time.